everybody. Welcome to The Locker Room, our weekly podcast where we shine a light on all of the student athletes here in our Bayou region. We have a wonderful show for you today. Going to talk to Gisclair about all of the PowerPoint rankings related to baseball and softball. It is that time of the year where we look at those teams that are going to be going into the playoffs. Boy selections are tomorrow. Girl selections are on Wednesday. Let's go straight to Casey and get an insight. Casey, how are you?
Doing fine, man. How about yourself?
I am doing well. This is one of those delicate situations where I almost don't know how to start this, but I think we'd be remiss not to talk about a little bit because we talk about high school sports in our area. And this is a young man who was competing at least at the college level, at the highest you can compete. And then it's just a tragedy what happened. Of course, I'm speaking of Kyren Lacy. I know that you knew Kyren, that you know the family, and it's a situation that is just, it's sad. That's the only way I know how to put it. What are your thoughts when you probably woke up yesterday morning and found out? How did that all go down? And what's your thoughts a day later?
When I found out, yes, I just complete shock. I mean, did not see it coming, did not anticipate that whatsoever. You get messages from friends. First thing you think is, oh, well, that's a scam. You guys fell for a link that's not true. And then you realize, oh, no, it is very much so true. As the day goes on, you hear more and more people talking about the situation and more information comes out. Just such an unfortunate event and such an unfortunate tragedy where we see a young man who had such a bright future, was such a gifted person who did so much in the classroom to get himself to be college eligible, then did so much work when he was at UL Lafayette to become LSU ready. All that hard work and it just a terrible tragedy, terrible situation. Thoughts and prayers to the Lacy family, to all the people who knew Kyren, all the people who looked up to Kyren, and then also thoughts and prayers to Mr. Herman Hall and his family, because their situation now, they were expected to go to court today and hopefully start the process of whatever was going to happen there, and that doesn't even get to take place either. So just a terrible situation all around, and it's one of those rare stories where there is nobody that's going to be happy with this. Everybody gets a sad ending. It's terrible.
I agree. You sit and you try and find the right words to say all around. And I'm not sure there's any right words or any wrong words, to be honest with you. I just think that it's a situation where I hope that kids understand it's tough. It's a burden to carry when you're probably that gifted. On the same token, people need to understand that you're a human being too. There are things that go along with it. And then I thought that was very appropriate that you mentioned the family of the 78-year-old gentleman who passed away, after the situation in Check Bay. So it's tough all around. And I hope in a horrible situation that there are lessons that we maybe can learn along the way with all of this. I think as a relatively, well, I shouldn't say that. I'm 10 years out of education now, but when I was going out, you could see in kids that there are things that are floating around in a kid's mind that even you, who is a graduate of the early 2000s, don't have to deal with, and things. So I hope that there's some solace in all of this and maybe some lessons to be learned.
100%. That's very well said. And look, I can't stress this enough to anyone who may need to hear this, whether you're a student athlete, whether you're a teenager, whether you're an adult. If you have problems, it's okay to seek help, man. I had to do it in my own life. It's okay to tell people I'm not okay. If you are having issues, if you are hearing things in your mind that you shouldn't be hearing, when that's happening, it's okay to tell someone about it. It's okay to seek help. It's not a badge of weakness. And we need to, as a society, and we've come a long way, but we need to, as a society, normalize the fact that sometimes the glass breaks and it's okay to go and get it repaired.
I agree 100%. Don't be scared to go out and speak with someone along the way. Not going to put it on the back burner. We're always going to remember, and we're always going to use it as an example, but we do want to move on just a little bit. We are at that time, and a lot of people sort of know, as you've seen, the name of this specific episode is the Picture Perfect Playoff Picture. Because we're at that point, and I am not going to do anything that is anything but full transparency. I went and I snipped Casey's article yesterday out of the Bayou Sports. Actually, you were talking about Thibodeau High and how Thibodeau High, for lack of a better way to say it, is starting their playoffs today, right? I mean, they may get in if they lose in what I was reading and what you had wrote, but if they want to get in and maybe assure themselves, you got to win today. So right underneath it, Casey has sort of all of the layout of the teams that are in and those that are out. And it's almost etched in stone. To be fair, tomorrow is the day that baseball pairings are announced. So, tomorrow is official. We may have some school out there. There's always sort of one surprise that happens, right? Maybe somebody had some forfeitures. Maybe somebody won a district and they're bumped up just a little bit. But for the most part, I think we know in our area. So I'll run it right down the line. First, we'll talk a little bit about 5A baseball. And, man, if it's only Destrehan and Hornville, I don't know what to think anymore in 5A. I would do whatever it takes not to be a 5A school. Sorry, South Lafourche, you're not a 5A school, but you're in it anyway. But whatever it takes not to be in Division I. Is that fair?
You got to win every game, man. It's crazy. South Lafourche has got a 20-win season this year. Beat Lutcher, beat E.D. White, have several quality wins. They're not even sniffing the playoffs right now in Division I non-select. It's so brutally competitive. Shane and his guys have a really good club. They're scratching and clawing and are trying their best to try to get in. If they win today against St. John, as you said a second ago, they're going to be in. If they lose against St. John, there's a very real chance that they won't make the postseason. So, yeah, it is a big game for them. The good thing for them is they do have their ace, Brody Gisclair, who's going to be throwing. He's ready. He's ready to roll. And that's the thing about Division I non-select is that because there are so many quality teams in the bracket, and you mentioned Destrehan and Honville, both incredible. Neither are even going to be at home in the opening round.
Right.
Just skirting in, too. So you got teams like that who are going to get in, and, they're really good, and they could do some damage. And that's the thing that Shane was relaying to me this weekend. He said, yeah, we're fighting to get in, but if we do get in, I think my team could go and win a series or two. So, a lot of parity, and it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and listen, a lot of baseball, and we say this over and over again, it depends on who's on the mound, right?
Yeah.
That being said, Thibodeau's got to throw their ace today. So if they play in the playoffs, say Friday, Saturday, or maybe Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it limits you a little bit, but you got to win to get in. So let's hope they do. It's St. John, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
St. John,
right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it was a pretty good ball team. I mean, it's single A, but it's a pretty good ball team along the way. So, let's hope that Shane and those guys get in. We go down to 8 of 4A, and, of course, that's where we go to Division II, non-select and Division II select, unless you're South Lafourche, who's Division I. It looks like South Terrebonne's going to be in, I would say rather easily, but middle of the pack, so to speak. Listen, kudos to them, quite honestly, for winning the district. I mean, I don't think anybody looked at South Terrebonne as being a team that was going to win District 8 4A, right? You sitting there and you win. I think you were 3-13 to start the season. But, hey, isn't that a Mike Barba stamp team, right?
Man, look, I'm doing my Power 5 rankings every week, and South Terrebonne's 3-13, and I'm like, well, at some point we got to move them out of the rankings, right? I knew they had a good club, so we had to move them out. But no, they've gotten hot now. They're 16-16 now. They're playing well. The key for them is their pitchers need to consistently throw strikes. They ran into such a bugaboo of walks, giving so much free charity to opponents at the beginning of the season. When they just simply throw strikes, they could do everything else. They have a really good offense. They have good defense behind their pitchers. And it looks like in the back end of the season, that's what they've done different. They have found a group of arms that they can rely on. They're throwing strikes. They're hitting the ball, putting it in play. And they're dangerous, man. Look, sometimes we like to get on these little shows and we say, oh, district championships don't matter. When you win a district that has Vanderbilt, ED White, Lutcher, Southfield, that does matter. And that's a great accomplishment for them to get into the playoffs with that.
I agree. Even Morgan City, who at one time had really good tradition, Ellender is still fighting a little bit, but I agree. Now, I'm not sure that South Terrebonne is made for a best 2 out of 3 series. We'll see how that all works out, but they certainly proved us wrong before. So, again, kudos to Mike Barber and his group. And then you have 2 other teams that are playing in a Division II select bracket. That would be Vanderbilt Catholic. Vanderbilt Catholic, again, I'm going to Bayou Sports here to solidify this. Bayou Sports has Vanderbilt at number 5. It's funny. Bayou Sports has it, and I'm seeing you right there. So it's kind of, trying to put it. ED White is at number 8 right now. ED White beat Vanderbilt Catholic last week. Vanderbilt Catholic on a little bit of a slide. I'm not sure what that might be about, but you get to wipe the slate clean, so to speak, right?
I don't know what that's about either, Stan. What's interesting is we had Chad Menard on play-by-play about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, and he was telling us, even before the little skid started, he said, we're kind of dealing with some adversity, and he didn't really elaborate, but I don't know, just something's not right now. They've lost 5, 6 games in a row. They're struggling coming in. They were sitting as the 2 seed. They've dropped to number 5, had some hiccups down the stretch. I know this, in a 2 out of 3, if I have James Guidry one of the 3 games, I feel good about it. So I do think that they'll bounce back and get back on the horse. ED White, kind of an opposite thing. They were struggling, and then now they're putting it together, and they're starting to play their best ball at the right time. So it'll be interesting to see. ED White does still have some room to maybe maneuver. If they could win their game today, they can maybe move up to 7 or 6 or so, whereas Vanderbilt, it looks like they can't fall any farther than number 5.
The one thing I do think, and it applies to everybody except for the Division I brackets, Division IV brackets, I've got that kind of backwards, is that when you get into a 2 out of 3 situation, it might change your entire sort of attitude. And when I say that, I speak of Vanderbilt. We were sitting here 2 weeks ago talking about Vanderbilt Catholic being there right behind CCA as maybe being a top team in our area, in our region. By the way, kudos for putting out your top 5s on Bayou Sports. But it's always going to be tough in baseball because you may know internally that I wouldn't want to play that team, but I can't put them in my top 5 because they're struggling. Right? Yeah, baseball is that one sport where it gets a little weird when you're doing the top 5, and I think that we're jiving on the same page with that. Would you agree with that?
100%. It's extremely difficult to rank the teams.
I'm thinking what parent is sending Casey a note right now saying, hey, we need to be in the top 5, but you can only go by what you can go by, right?
Yeah, I mean, you are what your record says you are sometimes. This is a great example with South Terrebonne. I knew they were better than 3-13, but I'm not going to have a team that's 3-13 ranked 3rd in my rankings, so you can only go by what they're doing on the field.
Exactly. It makes a ton of sense. Again, Vanderbilt and ED White in really good situations. Vanderbilt dropped a little bit, as you mentioned, and ED White started picking it up a little bit. 2 out of 3, all the way to Sulphur in that particular bracket. Division III select, Homer Christian going in at number 12. They have a tough one today. I don't know how much it's going to affect them. 2 out of 3, again, might be a little tough for them along the way, but I wouldn't doubt them because at the beginning of the year, we just didn't think much of it. And then all of a sudden, here they are, right?
Yeah, for Homer Christian, man, they got the Pertwee kid on the mound that's real good.
And he's healthy.
Yeah, he's healthy. That's a big thing for them. For Homer Christian, it's going to come down to they got to consistently score some runs. Their offense has kind of struggled at times, but if they could put the bat on the ball and play their small ball and get some runs on the board, they do have, I think, enough pitching to get through the 3 games. But you mentioned it a second ago. When you see the football struggles and when you see that the basketball team didn't have their best season, we were going into baseball thinking, well, they exceeded expectations and beyond having a great season. And I do think that they could win maybe a series or 2 once there.
Yep. By the way, I said Pertwee is healthy. He's probably maybe not like 100%. His dad works here at the hospital, so we kind of get the inside scoop. Terrific player there at Houma Christian. Finally, in Division 4 Select, the number one team, we've been talking about them all year long. I don't mean to be blasé about it, but CCA is just so good. And then for people who are saying, well, it's not like they have to play that juggernaut like Division One teams over and over again. Well, you come down the stretch and you beat John Curtis, and then you beat St. Charles Catholic 2 times in a row, and you really don't beat them. You beat them like pretty bad, right? You saw them Friday. They're like, yeah, they're good everywhere. As a matter of fact, if there was a 2 out of 3 series in that particular bracket going into Sulphur, it would almost be a shoo-in. But I'm going to tell you this, and I'll listen to your thoughts. But if on that so they're going to play, if they make it to Sulphur, fingers crossed for everybody locally. If they make it to Sulphur, they play on a Tuesday, like I think it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Then they would play the state championship game the next day at 2 o'clock. If they win that game on Tuesday, if they're there and they win it on Tuesday, you can forget about it. There you state champs, because everybody else on that, and Washita Christian might have 1 gun. Glenbrook might have 1 gun. Opelousas Catholic might have 1 gun. CCA's got a few guns, right?
No, 100%. If this were a best 2 out of 3 bracket, they would be as favored to win the championship as Mike Tyson was to beat Buster Douglas. They would be extremely well favored to win the championship. Can someone beat them once? Yeah, absolutely. They got some big arms out there. Central Catholic played a 1-0 game with them. They're in the bracket. And as you mentioned, everybody's got a college arm. The thing about CCA that was so impressive to me is watching them in person for the first time this season was how composed those guys are in the middle of the game. So case in point, they had a situation on Friday where Joe inadvertently filled out his lineup card wrong. He lists his pitcher as a pitcher/DH. So when he goes to run for the pitcher, you could courtesy for a pitcher. You can't courtesy for a DH. So he has a situation where in the 4th inning, he removes his pitcher, his starting pitcher, who was pitching extremely well, out of the game. And everybody else, that'd be like, oh no, what are we going to do? For them, it was just like, all right, Dudak, go in the bullpen. What does Dudak do in the 5th, 6th, and 7th? Don't allow hitting any of them. So they've just got a composure and a belief that when we're on this field, we're not losing. And then what was evident also is after the game, I'm talking to Joe, and he said, yeah, well, we were going to throw Dudak on Saturday against St. Charles. Our pitching plan's a little, out of wrap. All they do is they run rule them the next day and don't allow a run. So, there's just nothing that phases these guys. And you have the Cantor kid who's hitting home runs every game. They are such a special high school baseball team. 33 straight wins. No one's ever done it before. And legitimately, and this is not hyperbole. This is not, me being a prisoner of the moment. If they win the state championship, it's one of the best seasons in the LHSA baseball history. They would
no doubt.
It would be one of the great seasons in history.
No doubt. And as people say, the old cliche, nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can take that away from you. And the fact is if they win a state championship, it will be undefeated because they're going into the playoffs undefeated in the regular season. And you mentioned the Dudak kid. If you were to rattle off the top 4 pitchers, you wouldn't even mention his name. And you get around that. There are guys who used to be really good pitchers when they were sophomores that are on that team that really haven't pitched much this year, that you could probably throw them out and they could start and maybe be the ace for a lot of staffs on the high school level around here. So really interesting, and obviously they're going to do well. I think we're going to see them in the state championship game. And don't forget about Central Catholic. Central Catholic has probably given CCA their best game of the year. And when you want to throw one guy out there, Central Catholic can kind of do it too. So, it's going to be interesting in baseball for sure. What biggest surprise, real quick, I always ask you this, but, now that it is playoff time, what's the one thing that you were like, I didn't think we'd see that?
I go back to Assumption. We just have become so accustomed to them being a 25-win team and hosting and being a 3 seed, whatever. to see them down there with just 2 or 3 wins. And now, look, I saw them in person. They're not as bad as that record would indicate. They just were young and first-year coach and piecing it together. But that was a little awkward to see them there. And then, more recently, we talked about it a second ago. It was awkward, or it is awkward to see Vanderbilt having lost 5-6 games in a row. I mean, this is a team that has been playing at such a high level, and they were cruising, and then they just hit some sort of speed bump here, and it's been a struggle. Now, I get it. They haven't been losing to the Sisters of the Poor. They've been facing some good competition. But all year long, they've been facing good competition. They never had a lull like this. So I think that of all the teams in the area that sort of need their bye week, I think the Terriers are looking forward to that bye week. Get into Easter week, get back to the practice field, kind of figure some things out before the playoffs begin.
Agree. And I do think that maybe 2 out of 3 will help them.
Yeah.
But it's all about being hot at the right time. Just, see South Terrebonne. They seem to figure that out just a little bit. Softball. Softball brackets come out on Wednesday. It's the first year I remember where it's in the same little week, right? Usually it's a week before for softball, but it is the same week. Yet softball finishes 2 weeks before baseball. Of course, we mentioned last week we won't have our all-star baseball game because of the late finish. Softball finishes earlier, so I guess they get the playoffs in a little bit more compact. In 8-5A, Hornbill and Destrehan, same 2 teams we always talk about when it's in just about any sport in 8-5A, whether it be boys or girls. They're both going to be in, but I'm going to tell you, Thibodaux and Central Lafourche have had really good years. They'll be in. Unfortunately, HL, East St. John, Terrebonne, and South Lafourche are out. How about the Thibodaux Tigers and Central Lafourche?
Both those teams could swing it, man. They score some runs. They have some big bats in their lineups. They had really good years. They're both sort of in that area where they're in kind of the middle of the bracket. Don't be surprised if they could go, either as a host in round 1 or on the road in round 1 even, and win that opening round game. They have some girls on those teams that could flat out swing it.
Agree with that. And then we go to Division II first. We'll talk about non-select a little bit. A lot of teams in that particular district obviously have shots at winning state championships. And I say that with an S on the end because I think Assumption maybe can make a little run. They're sitting at number 3 in the power rankings. And there's just something about that team. They have played some dynamite competition. They've really kind of concentrated that little Ascension corridor where you have Santa Maria, Dutchtown, and East Ascension. So I think that gets you better. So they are in. Lutcher's in at number 5. Lutcher's always really good in softball. They've given Vanderbilt and E.D. White all they can handle. South Terrebonne's going to get in at number 11. There's a good grouping of girls there, and I think Cade Romero does a good job coming in from Central Lafourche to coach that team. And Ellender's going to get in. Ellender's at number 24, and I don't think they could get knocked out. The only team that's not going in is Morgan City.
Yeah, no, all those teams that you mentioned are going to be in. It's a great showing from our local teams in Division II non-select. The thing that separates, I think, the haves from the have-nots, Lutcher and Assumption have big old arms. And in softball, that's everything because you could throw them every game, So they've got those big power arms that could limit the great offenses to 1 and 2 runs. The others rely a little more on the bats. But that's kind of the difference. South Terrebonne, you mentioned they have a great core group, a bunch of young ladies that have done a great job all season. So they're looking to make a little push. But I do think that there's a big tier, and that's Lutcher, Assumption, and then everybody else is kind of trailing the pack in Division II non-select.
Again, agree. We move on to Division II Select, and obviously Vanderbilt Catholic is sitting at number 1. They are having a terrific year. Played extremely close games with E.D. White and Lutcher, 1-run games, and Assumption. So, there's a lot of – actually, I think they lost to Lutcher. All that being said, Vanderbilt has played a really good schedule and just has a couple of losses in there. But E.D. White's sitting at number 2. So, if the bracket holds true on Wednesday, you'll have both of those on opposite sides and a potential that they actually meet when they get to Sulphur.
Man, look, for the Division II Select, Vanderbilt was in a situation where everybody kind of knew they would be really good. I mean, they had a lot coming back, a lot of talent coming back. Great in the circle with the Baudouin kid, and they've got sluggers up and down the lineup. With E.D. White, it took a little longer to develop. They struggled a little bit at the beginning of the season, took some lumps along the way, but man, they found something because down the stretch, they have been playing at such a high level. You mentioned the close competitive game against Vanderbilt. They've beaten some very quality competition coming home. So for the Cardinals and the Terriers, you're right. We're looking at a situation where we could see a collision course where we might have multiple teams go to Sulphur and multiple teams trying to vie for the state championship.
And it's still, and I get it. In softball, it's probably a better scenario to have two girls that can pitch it in a circle, but you still could sort of get by with one if you strategize the right way. So E.D. White, you're right, can be right in that number. When we go to Division 3 first, let's talk about Division 3. Select, you have Homer Christian. Christy Crowder always does a terrific job. I don't think she has the firepower she has last year, because if you look around the collegiate landscape, she's got girls that are like MVPs at Spring Hill, and she's got one at West Florida. She's got one at LSU Eunice, who all played last year for her, who are leading those respective teams. So it's not the same. She is number 5, though. So let's hope that she could do some good things.
It's a situation with Homer Christian School, Stan, where it's almost like it's more impressive this year than in what it was last in their way. Because last year we knew they had so many guns, and we knew that they had these college seniors and, the Henry girl and all these other young ladies that were hitting the tar off of the ball. This year it's a whole new crew. And you mentioned to still be in the top 5. And Coach Crowdis herself has not been at a lot of the games. She's got a personal issue. She's been in and out. And so they've had all sorts of things pulling them apart, but yet here we sit, the brackets are coming out, they're going to be in the top 5. That just goes to show you have a great program, a situation where year in and year out, you're going to be in contention, you're going to be there. And I could argue, like we said just a second ago, the coaching job that they've done this year is as impressive as any other year there, because last year it was easy to coach the girls that just say, hey, just go up to the plate, hit a home run. Not quite the case this year, but they're still also sitting at that number 5 spot.
Yep. Infrastructure. Infrastructure is everything in these programs, and you know who's got it and who don't. Let's go to Division 4. Division 4 select. Sneaky Quiet is CCA. They're at number 12. Central Catholic at number 15. 2 points I want to make about that. It's going to be tough for either one, I think, probably even to make it to Sulphur. You got to have some things go your way along the way, right? Because, you got 11 teams in front of you if you're CCA. But in an overall athletic picture, I had, and I would love to get your take on this, I had always sort of looked at that particular district, which is 7-1A, and thought Central Catholic is kind of like the teams, again, plural, that you have to beat in that. I don't know if I believe that anymore. I think CCA is kind of taken over, and the folks at Morgan City are like, oh, my God, we got to play them in football. Oh, my God, we got to play them in basketball, although maybe Central Catholic had the better in basketball a little bit this year. But track and field, baseball, softball, CCA is starting to get to be a little well-rounded.
Yes, 100%. I mean, they go through the football regular season undefeated. Basketball, they were there even with several injuries that lingered from the football season. Baseball, they win the district championship. Softball, they win the district championship. But you're right. Their athletic department is on the climb. For CCA softball, I want to shout out a young lady. We talk about the Trostler twins on the baseball side. Their little sister, Bella's ridiculous on the softball side, man. She is an absolute monster at the plate. So just wanted to give her a little love and a little shout out. But she's going to be an all-state player this year. They got some girls who could swing it. They've had a wonderful season, fresh off of a big lopsided win against a 5A foe over the weekend. So, yeah, CCA's peaking at the right time. Going to try to make a little run.
Very good. I want to let you go, but do want to mention that with the playoffs happening, or at least ask you, is there a chance of you being at any fields maybe later in the week?
100%. So tonight we'll close out our regular season with South Volusia Homer Christian School. That one will be at 5 o'clock. But after that, we're going to look at the brackets. I know we've already started to get permission from some coaches in regard. This playoff's a little different. You got to kind of ask permission, and there's some different things that go into it. But I know we've got clearance from CCA baseball to do any of their games. We're looking to maybe do some Vanderbilt softball. So we're going to be around, and it's not going to just be baseball. It's going to be baseball and softball that we'll be trying to bring to you guys over the next couple weeks.
Very good. Always, thank you for the time. We appreciate it. And folks, go out, check in to Bayou Sports, get your latest on everything on a daily basis, or go tune in to Casey at Play-by-Play on KLEB during the week. On the weekend, you can catch him on the Coach's Corner, again on KLEB. Thanks for your time, Casey.
Happy to do it, man.
We'd like to thank Casey for giving us time today as we talk a little bit about all of the baseball and softball proceedings. As I mentioned, go to Bayou Sports and you actually can see if your favorite team is going to be aired live on streaming later in the week. Again, we hope you have a terrific week this week. We'll be back next Monday with another episode of The Locker Room.